Hey everyone, in this video I am going to walk through building out a restaurant menu using MetaBox custom post types, custom fields within Oxygen Builder. We're going to use repeaters to output all of the data, and in my two different examples I am going to use WP Grid Builder in one of them, and in the other one we are not going to use that. And the big difference between the two is just going to be the layout of everything. And one main point that we're achieving with this menu is we have two locations, and I'm going to kind of get into that as I walk through everything. But before we do, I'm just going to kind of show you where we're at right now. So I have this page built out. It's just an actual page. It's not an archive for this example. So I built it with two different sections. Basically, there's going to be this first section, which is built with my WP Grid Builder facets so that I can designate between the two locations what items, and we can filter it. So you can see there we're able to filter under each item and choose based on whatever location we're looking at. And you'll see that we have a filter for every different menu item type. So as you go through here, we can always choose what we want, and I have a lot of different items in here. So I'll keep scrolling here. And then even on the bottom, what I've done is chosen not to show some of these fields if they're blank. So I'll get into how we can do that, because beverages don't necessarily need an image, as those are going to be the same no matter where you get them. So the second option is, instead of filtering everything on the actual item level, what I did is separated them into two tabs. So we have a New York location and a Boston location, and I'm doing this just using tabs within Oxygen. So we can designate which we want there, and then based on that location, it's pulling in all of our items. And so one thing I'm going to jump back to, in the top portion, all I have is just my actual menu items: breakfast, appetizers, burgers, etc. But in my bottom portion here, where we differentiate the actual locations, I do also include a featured menu and a daily specials, which we'll get into as well. So I think as I just scroll here, so you can kind of see what we have before I jump into all the back end and walk through it all. And I'll jump over to the Boston location as well. So for me personally, I typically like to see all menu items be on the same page. I've been on a handful of restaurants' websites where every different category ends up being a different page, and it just makes it really difficult to navigate as you're trying to look at things, especially if you're going to call in an order and let's say you're going to get an appetizer, a burger, and a sandwich, and now you have to go to 3 different pages in order to do that. Just makes the usability a little more difficult. So I like the idea of having everything on one page, kind of like I have laid out here. So let's go ahead and jump in to the back end here, and we'll start from there. So within MetaBox, I made a custom post type and called it menu. I really didn't do anything special within any of these fields. I did change the dash icon, and I set up special taxonomies, which in order to do this, they're not going to show up here until you set them up. So after I made my custom post type menu here, I went to taxonomies and I created 3 of them. The first one is meal. And again, once you make this, I went over to post types and chose menu and then clicked save. And I just repeated that same process for the other two as well. So I have my featured menu, made sure to include that on the menu post type. And lastly, my daily special. Again, I went over to post types and made sure it's on menu. Everything else I left default in here. One thing to note is that make sure you are happy with your slug as you put it in, because I know sometimes you want it to be plural and it uses the singular slug, I believe. So just make sure that is actually what you want it before you save it and build out any data, because it's a pain to go back and change it after the fact. So once you have all three taxonomies saved, you do want to jump back to your post type and go to taxonomies and make sure you check them all here, because these will not be checked automatically, even though we checked them on the taxonomy side. You have to do it on both sides. So once you do that, you can go ahead and click update, and we can jump into the actual custom fields that I built out. So now I'm going to go to custom fields and menu item. So I'm just going to go all the way to the top here. Start with settings. You want to make sure you have your post type. Click your drop down and you'll choose menu, or whatever you named it in your case. And then we'll jump over to fields. You'll see I have a handful of different fields here. I started with a text field just as my menu item, and that is just in case the title I want to use ends up being different than what the post type title ends up being. It's rarely the case that those are different, but I have had scenarios when I'm building out custom post types and have titles that that actual page title ends up being different than what I want to use. So I always like to add a item field. And again, I just left everything else default here. Next, I added an image, and I did use image advanced. I'm using Oxygen 3.9 right now. Actually, let me jump over to my plugins here to verify exactly what I'm using, just so you guys can follow along. Let's see here. Yep, version 3.9 there, and MetaBox all-in-one 1.15.3 and MetaBox version 5.5.1. So jumping back here, I am using, as I said, image advanced, because I have seen some issues with the single image field. So I always recommend using image advanced when possible. And again, I left everything else default below that. Next, I made a checkbox list, and in here I added a handful of different options here. You can choose to just add everything as you see here, or you can add it like it has the data down here to change what your value is compared to the name of it if needed. Typically that's not the case, so I just did everything, both the name and value, as the same. Everything else I left default there as well. Next, I did price, and again, this one is a number field. One thing to call out is you do have to set any in the step field. So if you hover over this, you can see that it gives you some info on the increments, and it says enter any to accept any number, because if you do not do that, it's only going to allow whole numbers, and in our case we do not want only whole numbers, so you do have to enter any in the step field. I also prepended text, I put in the $sign, but that is not necessary. That's more for just the back end. Next, we have a description field, which I just used a text area, and again, everything else is default. Next, we have special options, which is also a text area, and everything else is default below that. And lastly, we have another checkbox list, which is menu item callouts. These are kind of specialties. All right, and that was our last field. So I went ahead and saved all those. And now we jump over to our actual items. So I have a bunch pre-filled in here, as you saw. I didn't want to do this live because it was a ton of just data entry to get all this in here, and I didn't want to waste your guys' time while I was doing that. So I'm just going to jump into a few different items here so we can take a look. So once we're in here, we have just our normal page title up here, our actual menu item title right here. Again, you can make that different than up here if you need to. I have my image. You could also use the featured image of the post, but in my case, based on a question someone was asking, I did it similar to how they were doing it, so they could follow along. So I have that in there. You can see we have our checkboxes to set what our category is. We have our price, a description, any special options if need be, and then another checkbox list if we need anything there. And then on the right hand side, you can see we have our taxonomies showing up. So I have this set as a daily special showing as Wednesday. We have a featured menu showing that this is a featured item. We have our meal types, which is going to be dinner and lunch, and we're choosing which restaurant, which is Boston. So let me jump over to those because I guess I skipped that step as well. So back over on the menu on the left hand side here, I'll just go from top to bottom. So I went to daily specials and I just entered in all the days of the week here. And for my featured menu, all I have is featured. So just one option. For meal, I have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And for restaurant, I have my two locations, which is Boston and New York. Again, your locations are probably going to be much closer than Boston and New York to each other, just, a few cities away, but I just wanted to use those as examples. So you can see I pre-filled all of those in, and that way when I actually go to a menu item, as soon as I start typing in one of these, it'll show up. And I'm going to add a couple here so we can see how everything works, but I'm not going to do that yet. But as I mentioned, we have those all filled in as we need. And if we jump to another item in here, you can see that I have the data filled out as needed. Some things will have special options, some won't, as I showed on the front end before we jumped into the back end. And again, with our taxonomies as well, some of them are going to be blank and some of them are going to have all of the options. Because one of the main things we wanted to achieve here is there's going to be a handful of menu items that are going to be on both menus, so we don't want to have to create two items that are exactly the same just because they're used at different locations. So by adding my taxonomy here, I can choose which location or locations we can use this menu item, and we only have to enter the data in once. So that's why we set it up like this. All right, let's look at one other one here. So again, we have our titles, our menu item, custom field, our image advanced, our checklist for category, our price, item descriptions, special options, callouts, And then on our right hand side here, we have all of our taxonomies. So you can see we have this one set as a daily special, which is today. I did that specifically so I had an option to see here. So if I scroll all the way down to our daily specials, you can see that right now we are on the Boston location, which is a daily special of shrimp salad. And if I go to New York, we have the mixed salad. So let me jump back to our item here, and you can see that our mixed salad is listed as New York only for the location, restaurant location, and that it's listed as the Thursday special. And if we went back to, I believe it was our burger that we looked at first, that was a Wednesday special, and you can see that that's not showing, even though we had Boston selected initially here. So you can see that that burger is not showing under daily special. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention here. I think that's about everything on the back end. I'm going to jump into, I think, the facets next within WP Grid Builder. So in order to do that, you do have to install both WP Grid Builder and the two add-ons, which are the Oxygen add-on and the MetaBox add-on, and you can see I have both of them activated. So once you do that, you can go to all facets and just create a facet, but instead I'm just going to edit what I have here. So you'll want to choose your name and your title. Those can be the same or they can be different. The name is more of the back end, but the title is what you're going to see on the front end. So if I scroll all the way up, you can see we have restaurant location for one of these, and of course that's not the one I'm on. We're on meal type here. If I go to behavior, you can see I have it set to filter, checkboxes, taxonomy, and I go in and choose my meal taxonomy, and everything else I left default. And then you click save. If you need to, you can re-index to make sure it pulls all of the data. And let's look at location, because that's the one we're actually using. So you can see I have a different name here. I just have it location in the back end here, and my title is restaurant location, which actually matches what we have here. So that's where you control that within your facet. And just like the previous one, I have it set to filter action, checkboxes, and taxonomy, and set it to restaurant. Just for my drop down, chose restaurant, and everything else I've left as default. Go ahead and save that once you have it created. And then let's go ahead and jump into the Oxygen Builder. So again, I have this all created, so we didn't have to waste a ton of time and make this a 2-hour long video. I did not really do much with styling at all. I styled it just enough that it doesn't look terrible, but not enough that I would never deliver something like this. And this video's purpose isn't for design by any means. It's solely for the development and how to get all this data to show properly. So what I did is, we'll just start with this breakfast section here. I created a section, I added a div inside that, and the reason I have some extra divs in here is because I was copying and pasting stuff or duplicating, and it's much easier to duplicate one div than a whole bunch of items. So there are probably extra divs in here than you would really need, but if you're also just going to set this up on one of them and then duplicate all your work, it will be a lot easier if you have a few extra divs in there. Just makes your life easier moving everything around. because there is a lot of repetition in doing this. So just duplicating once you've made it once will save you a lot of time. So within my div here, I have just my heading here, which I have set to an H2. And then I have another div which contains the next batch of stuff here, which is going to be my facet from WP Grid Builder and my repeater. So let's look at our facet here. Actually, I'm going to start with the repeater. Inside here, let me expand this all so we can see it all. You have your div that is always part of the repeater. I put another div inside it just to make sure I have a container around everything to make things a little easier. I created my image and I set my width and height there. And then thanks to Kevin Geary on his channel, he always talks about adding some custom CSS called Object Fit Cover, and that'll keep your image ratio in line, and it won't stretch your image if it's not perfectly exactly the same size as you have. So in my case here, some of my images are not perfect squares. So that one is, that one's not, but what's going to do is make it actually fit that, just like we would with a background image. So that's a really helpful tip that I picked up from his channel over at Digital Ambitions and the Inner Circle. If you're not following him, I highly recommend it. So we have our image in there. Then I created another div on the right hand side here, and in that div I have another div for my title and pricing. We have our heading set here as an H3. Then I just have another text box with some background to it. Didn't do really anything special there. And then I have two more text fields for both my description and then my special options. And all of this is our custom data. So now that I walked through what we all have here, I'm going to actually show you how I entered all of it. So we'll start again with the image. So if I go over to our image URL, I went to data, MetaBox field, and I did my menu image. And I always choose original, but you can size things as needed. Click insert and it shows there. Next, I went to my heading. If I double click in here, go to insert data, MetaBox field, and now you can see we're getting more fields showing up than under the images, but that's okay. So on this one, we are going with our menu item because that's how I had it titled. I do not check any of these boxes, and I clicked insert and done. Next, we have our text field here. And the one thing you will see is that my $sign is not pulled in from MetaBox. So what I did is just placed, once I chose my data, I'll just start over here. So I highlight everything, clicked insert data, MetaBox field, and then went to price and insert and done. And you can see that once we do that, our $sign is now gone. So what you can do is double click in here again and put your cursor all the way to the front and just add your $sign and then click done again. And that way it's always going to add the custom data just right after your $sign, and it's always going to fill for the rest of them. And I just again repeated this process for the rest of our data here. Double click everything, click insert data, and went to my item description, insert that, click done, or you can also click off of it. And lastly was our special options field. So if you click insert, MetaBox, special options, insert, and done. So the next thing that we're going to look at, which I didn't do on all of these, is going to be these icons that represent the callouts here. So what I did is I just added 3 random icons. I would normally bring in an SVG that represents what I'm trying to show here, but for the simplicity of this video, I'm just using existing icons. So within Oxygen, I just created an actual icon and put it in here. And in order to get these to show up properly, what we want to do is come up to our conditions and set condition. And we're going to choose our dynamic data in the drop down here, MetaBox field, menu items callout, and we want to, I'm going to use my label, click insert, and contains gluten-free, which matches what I have. And I can click the X there, and I'm just going to repeat that same exact thing. Set condition, I choose my item, menu item callout, and all I'm changing here is what it contains is spicy. And then lastly, my third one is going to do the same exact thing, but I'm just changing it to vegan. And that way you can see that it's showing up here based on what we have. And if I come to the front end, you can see that they're showing appropriately based on what I have. So if I look at this one, it's eggs and bacon, which is said to be gluten-free there. Eggs and bacon is showing as gluten-free. We're just saying that W is gluten-free in this example. And our first one was a waffle. If I go back to my menu and waffle, that should be showing gluten-free and vegan on the front, and it is. And this is showing as spicy, even though avocado toast and an egg wouldn't be spicy, but that's what it's just designated in here as an example. So let me jump to that quick. So you can see in the back end here, I have it set to spicy, and it's showing on the front end as spicy. And you can see my spacing is a little messed up here, but that's okay. And moving on to the next. So let's move along back to the actual repeater itself now, since we've gone through all the data. So if I come up to my repeater, what I've done is gone into my query, and I've actually chosen the advanced query builder, and this is where the fun begins. So once you open that, what I did is I added my first parameter, which is going to be post type, and I set that to my custom post type, which is menu. And again, you pull that from our actual post type and menu, and we want to use the slug for that. So you do want to make sure that it matches exactly here. The easiest way to do that is simply just copying it right from the slug field and paste it in here. Next, for this one, I did a tax query. You click add value. In our first drop down, we're going to choose an array, and then we're going to add 3 values to that. Our first one is going to be a taxonomy. You can see we have a handful of options here, and I don't believe it matters what order you put these in. You can just match what I have here exactly, as I know this works. So I did taxonomy meal, which again, I match exactly to what my taxonomy is here. Again, I just copy and paste everything right in here, and then you don't have to worry about if you have it correctly. Next, I chose terms in the drop down and click add value. And here I put in the actual term that I want to match to. And then I choose field for my next one, and we choose the slug. Next, what I am choosing is a meta query from my list, and this is going to allow us to pull from an actual MetaBox field. So I choose MetaBox query, I add my value. Again, I choose an array. I choose key for my first one, and I choose menu category. And I ended up just pasting that in. You can also type it. There is an underscore in the middle of it, so make sure you do have that if you are just typing it in. The full thing is menu category. Next, I chose a value for my middle option here, and I clicked add value there. And here I typed in breakfast, which matches directly my menu item here. So you can see that menu category is actually what my key is here. So if I go to my custom fields, menu items, my menu category ID is what I ended up using, which is basically the slug of it. So again, you copy that directly from there and paste it into your key field if yours ends up being different. And then what I did is grabbed, we did breakfast, which is on the bottom here. So again, I copy exactly as we have it there and paste that in down here. And then for the type, we're going to use all capitalized CHAR for characters because that's what we're using. Other options would be like numeric and such, and you can find that all just within WordPress's documentation. So we have that there, and once you have all of those, you can go ahead and close it and click apply parameters, and you should see that it pulls everything that you need. You can see that I don't actually have any data for my custom options field on any of these items. Although if I do go in and add some here, it's probably not going to actually show it unless we go on the front end. So I'll do that. Yep, you can see that it shows it here now. I'm not going to refresh this because I don't want to take up too much more time here. So that's what I did on the first repeater. And what I ended up doing is basically just duplicating this repeater a whole bunch of times as I needed to. And as we go into the, actually before I do that, I got to go back to my facet. So what I did is just go to your add button, WP Grid Builder, and choose Facet. And once you have that open, come on, you're going to choose which facet you want. Again, I choose location here, and then you can choose your repeater that you want it to pull from. I went through and I renamed all of these, so it was a lot easier for me to know which one's which, because otherwise it's just going to show up as Oxygen Repeater 7, Oxygen Repeater 8, and so on and so forth, so you don't actually know which one you're choosing as you're going through here. So if you actually rename it, it makes it a lot easier to find the correct one. And once you do that, you can click apply parameters at the bottom, and it should load up for you. So it's very simple to do that once you have those built. Now moving along, again, I just did the same exact thing for the next repeater. Went into my query, my advanced query builder, edit query. My post type is exactly the same as menu. My tax query is going to be very similar. Again, we chose array. Our taxonomy is meal. Again, just click your drop down there and choose which one you want. It should be taxonomy for the first one. Terms, I have 2 values here because under appetizers we could have lunch or dinner item showing. So I have my term there, and you just add another value as needed. And again, you want to make sure that these match exactly as the slug does from your taxonomy, just like this matches exactly as your slug. Next, we did our meta query, and all we did is we used the same menu category, and all we did was changed from breakfast to appetizer, which matches our menu category here. Once that's done, you can click the arrow or X and X out of it and click apply parameters, and it's going to save for you. With my facet, I did the same exact thing. I added it right above. I always add it right above the repeater. I chose my location and chose the proper repeater within my drop down here. For this one, it's my app repeater or apps repeater, and click apply parameters, and it should pre-fill for you. And I repeated this same process for all of our next items all the way down. I'm going to skip the rest of these, I think, just because they're all pretty much the same as that one. The only thing I'm going to differentiate is our beverages here. So what I ended up coming over and doing here is I actually set conditions here. So I said if my dynamic data MetaBox field menu image insert is not blank, it's going to show this element. And then I did the same exact thing here, went to set conditions, and I just set this, instead of my image, I just chose my menu item description, which you can see as I highlight here in the path towards the end over here as I highlight that. And again, you just want to set it to is not blank, and it'll show as long as that's not blank. And I just repeated that for all of the other fields. And that way it's only going to show on the front end. Again, if I scroll down, it's not going to show all of that data. It's just showing what is actually filled in. And you could set it to do this on all of them. That way it shows a little bit better if you don't have all of that information in there, because otherwise it would look similar to this with a broken image showing there. So in an end item, I would probably set those conditions on all of my repeaters, not just this one. So again, you can do that before you actually duplicate everything. And again, my design here is not perfect. You can even see if I scroll up, some things are a little bit off here. So sometimes you have to play around with that to get everything to fit. But again, this isn't, this video's purpose isn't to do design. It's to look at the actual development and how to get all your data to show up properly. So again, jumping down, I'll jump into our query again on this one, just so we have one more option to look at when we're using our actual grid builder to do some filtering. So I have my post type as menu, my tax query again set to array with my taxonomy meal, my terms. Here I have it set to lunch, dinner, and breakfast. My field is slug. I have a meta query set to array with my key set to menu category, which matches the slug for that MetaBox custom field. I have my value as beverage. I have my type as care for character. I'll leave that up for a second. All right, and that's all you need to do. Always make sure you hit the apply parameters, especially if you're going through and duplicating these and just changing some of the items. You always want to make sure you click apply. I'm just going to click save, so we have that all here. Next, I'm going to just collapse all of that. And we're going to come down to our second area here. So here, I'll open these, and you can see I have this set to tabs. I am using automatic CSS, so I just added a breakout full class, so it went to my full width here, and I just set my tabs just so I did a little bit of styling here. I added a background color, and let me switch my classes here. I set a background color there too. I set my width to 50% and set my layout to columns, center, and center. And my typography I set to center. And that way it spans the whole width of my page, even though the section width is technically, I believe, 1280 in this example. And then from there, you just edit your text directly under the actual tab. And then under your tab's content, I'll just go to one of these to start. So this one will work our way down. These top ones are going to be the trickier versions, and as we get towards the bottom, they get a little bit easier. So we'll start with our featured. I'll go right to my repeater, because again, all the data inside my card here is the same as above. All that's different is our query. So once you have your repeater selected, we're going to go to the query, edit query. And here I have, again, my post type menu. I have my tax query set to array. I have my taxonomy as meal, which matches what we had previously. I have my terms, which are lunch, dinner, and breakfast, as we could pull from any of those three items. And then you'll see that I also added two more values here. So if you want to add more than one, you just click add value here, and it's going to bring up a new field where you can choose your array. It'll now allow you to click add value. You click that 3 times and it'll give you 3 fields. And that's how you can actually go in and select your taxonomy for your top one, your terms for your middle one, and your field for your bottom one, and then type in or copy and paste exactly what you need for your values. But since I don't actually need that, I'm going to delete that one. So moving to my second one here, it's also an array. I set my taxonomy to restaurant, which is going to be my location. And that we're doing because we only want to show my New York options on this tab. So we set our term to New York. Field is going to be slug again. And next we're going to have another array here. In this taxonomy, I set my featured menu as my taxonomy here. I set my term to featured, and my field again is going to be slug. So what this is saying that it's only going to show custom post types menus with taxonomies of meals that are classed as lunch, dinner, or breakfast, and taxonomies that are termed New York, and a taxonomy featured menu termed as featured. So it's only going to show if all of these are met. So I can close that out and click apply parameters, and you see it's going to show there. So if I go and look at one of these items, I think we had a burger open to begin with. You can see that we have it set to featured here, and oh, this one is Boston only, so I apologize. Where's my other burger? I'm on 2 pages here. I didn't even realize that. Cheeseburger, there it is. So this one I have set as well to, again, be my Wednesday special, just like the one we just looked at, also featured, but this one is New York only. So that's why that's what we're showing here under my featured item. So the next thing I did there is I'm going to actually, I apologize. We don't have to do anything else there because we're not doing anything for days of the week. This is only the featured. So these aren't going to change based on the specific day. These would only change based on if you have them set to featured in our taxonomy for these items. So we can always add more or take some out as we see fit. So with that one, we are good. The main difference between the top repeaters that we looked at, again, if I scroll all the way back up here we're actually filtering using our WP grid builder, where down below here, we're on our New York location. So we're going to just automatically filter and show only items that have the term New York selected on them under our taxonomy restaurant. So next we're going to do our daily special one. So I'm going to go ahead and click in here to get to my repeater. And this is the one that's going to be a little more tricky. So again, I'm going to go to my query, edit, and again, we have our post type set to menu. We have our tax query, similar to the last one we just looked at. We have our taxonomy meals set to lunch, dinner, and breakfast, which matches exactly our last one. We have our restaurant location array here as well, which matches exactly to our last one. And then the different spot here is going to be our third array, which is going to be our taxonomy of daily specials. So we have all of our terms in here, which are going to be each day of the week. And again, you want to match the slug of these terms. So in this case, they are not capitalized. So I have all of those in here. So it's going to pull all of our items regardless of what day it is. And then our field is going to be slugged just like above. And the reason I do this is so that we can actually use conditions to show and hide things based on the actual day. So we have all 7 of our days in here to filter our daily specials, but you can see I'm only seeing 1 right now. And what I did next is I went into my actual repeaters div and came up to conditions, and I set a condition, and I chose in my drop down day of the week is equal to, and I went over to my data here, and I went to advanced, taxonomy terms, and daily specials, and insert. And what that is doing is that my day of the week has to equal the day, the term for that special in order for it to show. So in this case, you can see, I don't know that the turkey sandwich is actually supposed to be correct there. Nope, it's not. Let me get back to my repeater here, query, click apply. May need to just update there. Yep, there it goes. Because I did switch those and I hadn't refreshed here. So you can see that's why you always want to make sure you click the apply query parameters, because it doesn't always update everything. So you can see now on the actual front end, it's only showing today's special, when if I look at this page tomorrow, which is going to be Friday, it's only going to show the Friday special based on what we have in our day chosen here under daily specials. And that was the easiest way I found in order to do that. There might be another way to do it within your actual query, but this seemed to be the simplest way for me to achieve that. Next, I'll jump down to our breakfast repeater. Again, I'll just click in here, open my query, advanced, edit query. My post type set to menu, my text query. First array I have, again, is going to be my meal. My terms is breakfast. My second array is going to be restaurant in the location of New York. And then at the bottom, again, I have my meta query, just like we saw with our very first example I went through, which is our MetaBox custom field checkbox that we selected. Again, we choose array. We set our key to menu category, which matches what we have here. Next, I choose my value, which is breakfast, which again, we pulled from right here. And last is the character type, or the type of character. And it's just CHAR. You don't type the whole thing in. And once you do that, come out and click apply. And it should update that data for you. All right, and I just repeated that all the way down the list for all of those. Again, I'm not going to review all of those. Again, I'm going to do one on the other location just so we can see that. Actually, I'll just click collapse all, make life easier. This time I'm going to go to my second tabbed content, and we'll go to start with our featured again. And I want to get to my repeater. And here I went to my query, advanced, edit query. And here, the only difference I have from the last one is instead of New York here, we just have Boston. And I'm going to repeat that same exact thing all the way through on these repeaters. So all of the other data is exactly the same. The only difference is when I get into each of my repeaters here, instead of having New York, I just change it to Boston in my case. Again, you would match it to the actual category that you need, but that is the only changes I did down the line. And again, once you've created one, you can simply just duplicate and change things as needed. That makes it way easier and faster. So all I did is I created one of these at the very top, and I just duplicated all of these all the way down until I got here. Even on the tabbed content side, once I had one of them built, I just duplicated it, so I didn't have to repeat it. All I did was go in and edit the location and changed it from New York to Boston in this example, and then it filters everything properly. So it makes life easier once you get the first one created. So again, jumping to the front end now, again, I'll refresh everything. If I had to choose between the two options here, I would choose the second option where we're using our tabs versus using just filtering here, because I think the usability is better on that side. And you can see this one's must have the wrong repeater chosen there. Yeah, that one works. So I must have one of the wrong ones chosen for salads. Not sure why that is. So, and that's another reason. It's just one more thing you gotta keep in line. And I just think the layout of this version looks a lot better, having your tabs here to differentiate which location. And again, I would stylize this better to make it pop out more. But again, this video is not about styling, it's just about the development side. So that way each of these has the specific items. You can see there's some items that are duplicates, like the turkey sandwich is good at both locations, but in the New York location there's the cheeseburger, and in the Boston location there's the double bacon burger as our featured menu item. Our daily special is going to be different. And even if we go down to our actual salads, they both have the chef salad, but New York has the mixed salad. And if I go over to Boston, it's going to have the shrimp salad. So you can see there's going to be some overlap where we didn't have to build two menu items for the same thing. We just entered it once and it shows up in both places. And then we also have the ability to have items that only show in one. So I hope this video helps kind of walk through the different options of how you can show different items. I don't imagine everyone would want to make it look exactly like this, but at least with what I've shown you in the back end here using the query builder, it should give you what you need in order to build out the menu that you want to build with the data that you want. And again, you can add in all sorts of different things, including icons, which I didn't quite get figured out here, but I will get that sorted out and share with everyone. Sorry that this video ended up being pretty long, but this was a pretty heavy and in-depth tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions, so just let me know what questions you do have, and I should be able to give you some solid answers. Thanks for watching.